into now some basic concerns and that history part of the overview. And so the first thing is the technology that we're adopting aligned with our current practices and philosophies? So if we're using positive behavior supports, Classroom Dojo, when it first came out and it was being kind of thrown around, I haven't looked at the application this month or these past few weeks, so I'm not 100% positive it's still configured this way since they're working with Greg Benner now, which I didn't know. But before, it was a developer who was in England. I met him at a conference. He was actually one of the merge table guys. And he came from, I think, a history and a theater background, had some friends who were teachers, and decided to make an app. So, great idea for an application, no research base or collaboration behind what that application was doing. One of the features of the avatars, which wasn't shown today, was that it actually could project both positive and negative behavior. So you could theoretically have pictures of all of the kids in your class, and some of those kids had a red spot or a red dot or negative points up on their classroom wall. Again, if you're a classroom and a teacher in a district where you're using response cost, then that's probably aligned with your philosophy. If you're a building that's using positive behavior interventions and supports, projecting negative student behaviors onto a large screen, possibly not aligned with your philosophy. And so one of the dangers of when we hear by word of mouth or research ourselves is, what is the capability of this technology that we're choosing, and is it actually what we're trying to put together in our schools? So those were one of the pieces
and the
of concern.
The conference where she was at having that conversation was dissociation with positive behavior interventions and supports. And so there's this funny mismatch, kind of almost a misalignment in some ways, but it's that between theory and practice.
Yes, so he and I did have a conversation with the developer, and I said, do you know what conference you're at? Could I highlight some sessions for you? Because I feel like we should talk. But it was a piece that wasn't out there, so being a consumer is really important about knowing where, when we're giving these pieces to our teachers, can they use all of that application? Would it be fantastic? Could they disable just the negative piece or have the negative piece not project? Use the positive piece? Maybe, and that's great, but we have to actually do those parts. Because as Dr. Benner was saying during his keynote, whenever you give a strategy out to the population of your school, to your teachers, to your paraprofessionals, and you don't provide enough training, you're going to have the teacher that goes over and stands proximally with their body to the side, and you're going to have the teacher that comes over and has that intimidation piece. We can do the same thing almost in some ways more easily with technology. We can use it in a way that we're not intending to. Another concern is cost and compatibility with existing systems. So what we often find is we're asking schools to collect just behavior-specific data. So in the case of SWIS, and we might say, well, ISIS is a great way to organize your Tier 3 behavior intervention plans. You could also have another system in that school called IEP Plus, IEP Direct. Well, that's collecting similar information about all of your students with special education needs who may not all have behavior education plans, behavior intervention plans. Can those systems talk to each other? Do you know? Where do you export the data to? What happens to that data? What server is it stored on? So thinking about those pieces. And then cost. Sometimes there are applications or other pieces that you can download half for free, but then there's a hidden fee of the actual software that goes with it. There may be pieces out there for tracking academic progress, like the DIVLs through the University of Oregon, where you can use the system for free and then only pay $1 per student for the school year to actually enter everything into their reporting system and get a full report out. So on the flip side, there are some great resources that you pay just a little bit for and you might not know about, versus other resources that get advertised heavily that might be very expensive. And evaluation needs to be a central criterion, and I know that Dr. Gage really wanted this slide, so he's not supposed to come in yet, but I'm going to let him do this one slide.
Okay. So, yeah, it's really simple. I think the evaluation part is the most important part, and one of the reasons and the impetus behind this this whole project and this study, we're not ed tech people. We're not. I'm not an ed tech person. You don't have me come in, fix your computer, or give you recommendations on what specific program. What was bothering us and the issue was so often technology gets seen as this shiny new object. And it's like, okay, I got iPads. Okay, that's great. And then what happens is that we use them for a little while, they actually don't ever solve a purpose, and then they end up in the closet, right? Along with all the other things that we've bought and used and all these other things. So we wanted to come up with a database decision making model for technology to help teachers primarily, but also school districts districts, for states to be able to make recommendations so that there's some systematic process. So that was one of the key things. And for me, as primarily numbers guy, I'm all about the evaluation side. So I'm not interested in just, how do we make the decision, but then how do we evaluate the effectiveness of the decision we've made to know whether or not we should change something, or what we should tweak. But the big picture when it comes to evaluation is that you're not evaluating the iPad. You're evaluating the outcome, right? And that technology is not the outcome. Technology is just a tool. The iPad is no different than a pencil. It's just a fancy tool we're using to reach the outcome, which is learning or improved behavior performance or anything like that. So it's really, really important as we think about a model, as we think about just making decision making, that when we think about evaluation, we think about the fact that these are tools to reach an outcome, and it's important for us to predefine what that outcome is to determine that.
Good. Yeah, your slide. Great. So the next question is, who can you trust? Right? Because you have different people, the pharmaceutical reps, but there are technology reps that are coming in. They're coming to your district offices. And so being cognizant of what that landscape is currently looking like with lobbyists and proprietary companies who are coming in with one-stop shop solutions, can their solution actually do what it says it can do? So if I spend $20,000 on a camera that can rotate 360 degrees to supervise student teachers, is that the answer to when I'm in Florida and I'm in Gainesville and I need to supervise student teachers that are in the Keys, looking at them? The 7-hour distance, is that going to let me do that? Well, it sounds great, and if I go to their website, I absolutely can. In practice, when we chatted with the University of Hawaii, who has a similar issue because they have islands, the camera itself comes in an Uzi case and is about this big and this large. So transporting that camera to the actual destination and then setting it up is a huge barrier. Furthermore, you have to be able to operate on the school's network to get that video out of the school. Well, most of those schools are in rural locations where you can't actually use the technology that they've selected to get the video back out. Or there are issues with consent because you're now filming the students and the teacher at the same time. So thinking about some of those pieces about if this is the advertised solution, maybe it is great, but is it really going to work for us? Can we have a trial period? So asking app developers, software companies, we're a school, we're interested in you, but through an email, through a contact with them, could you give us a 30-day window, even if it's not advertised? Especially with some of these applications, one of the reasons Dojo has gotten as much attention as it has is that they made it free at first on purpose because they wanted users. Later, their plan was to charge for it. So there's nothing wrong with you going back and doing a little negotiating just because it seems official, like a store, like a department store where you can't do that. And even in department stores, I've done this at Anthropology, you can absolutely still negotiate for things like furniture that's on the floor. So your application and your software is on the floor. You still go out and do that. Haggle with them, talk with them. I'm an education professional. We'll give you feedback. Let us try. But many apps and developers, as we said before, may or may not be informed by educators, researchers in the field, kind of like policymakers and politicians in Washington. They have a lot of opinions and a lot of things that they say. But is there a basis behind what they're designing and creating? So that's another part you want to look at. Where did they come from to create this piece of technology that I want to use?